Hello there and welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And it's me, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And this will be my last video. Well, for 2024 anyway. There'll be loads more in 2025. Now, this video is based on a challenge I received from Melissa, who hails from Austin, Texas. Now, Melissa had purchased the resource capacity planning template from the Change Tips and Tools Patreon. Now, you can find the link for the playlist on how to build the resource capacity planning template for yourselves, and it can be found in the description, or you can buy the latest version by following the link again in the description to the Change Tips and Tools Patreon. Now, the challenge from Melissa is as follows. First, she wanted to change the program to departments in the template, and she also wanted to change the bank holidays to holidays. Sounds simple, doesn't it? However, this presents some problems, as in it causes a problem for the data validation that we've created within the template in our tables, and also Power Query just does not like it when you change column names on it. It tends to break. So how do I make both these dynamic and accept changes to table columns without the template breaking? Well, let me show you how you can do it in this video. First, we will cover some basic housekeeping for those who have bought the template on Patreon but have chosen not to follow the training series. Then second, I will show you how I made the data validation dynamic based on table column name changes. And then third and finally, I will show you a trick to overcome column name changes in Power Query so you don't break Power Query. Let's do this. So let's take care of the housekeeping first. So there's two things you need to do, you must do to be able to use the resource capacity planning template if you've bought it off Patreon. The first is when you first open up the template, you will see this security warning here on the template. And if I just click the details here, it's warning us that the active content might contain malware or other security hazards. And this is because of the macros and the data connection. So we've got Visual Basic in here, that's in the template, and we've also got data connections through the Power Query and the Power Pivot. So you need to enable this. So you need to enable them, so I'm going to click Enable Content. The second thing is if you do not see this Power Pivot ribbon, which is an Excel add-in, Power Pivot is an Excel add-in, you need to add it in to your version of Excel. So I'm using Excel 365. That's what I'm using here. And on your machine, you need to go to, with Excel open, any Excel file, doesn't need to be the template. You can do File, select Options, go to Add-ins. Then here down at the bottom here you see Manage Excel Add-ins. Select the drop down and select COM Add-ins here. Then click Go. And you must make sure that the Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel is ticked and click OK. And you only have to do this once. I've already enabled it, so I'm going to click Cancel. And then that's all you need to do. And that is the housekeeping covered. Let's now get on to the next challenge, which is basically changing the column names. And just so when we built this template through the training series, we put data validation to stop user error. So if I change this, say for example category to categories, it's obviously telling me here that it's protected, so I would then click the unprotect, because now that we've enabled the macros we can use this. So we'll unprotect all the sheets like so, and click OK. And now I can change that. So if I just add an S to categories in there, and if I type demo, I'm going to get a data validation error. And that's because even though it's different, it can't pick up the column. So let's just look at what's going on. So I'm going to click cancel. So if I then go to data and I do data validation, we can see here that there's the data validation that I've done in here and that we did in the training series. And remember, there's a link to that training series in the description. Is I'm using the indirect function to refer to this column here. And remember, the indirect function takes a piece of text and converts it to a range. So we need this to be dynamic. Well, this is how I overcame it. So if I take this and I just copy, you saw what happened there. As soon as I did the left arrow, so the way to overcome that is I'm just going to press F2 to take it into edit mode, and now it'll let me just select it like so, and I can move without actually changing the formula. So I'm going to do Control Copy and copy that piece of the formula and do OK. That's OK. It's saying, do you want to continue? Yeah, because it's telling me there's an error with it, which is fine. Okay, so I'm now going to unhide. Now I'm going to hit review here, and I'm going to take the workbook protection. This is where it protects the structure, stops you from changing the name of the tabs or hiding or unhiding sheets. So I'm going to unhide static data support. I'm going to choose that and unhide it. Now while I'm at it, the other thing I noticed with Melissa, who's in the States, is I'm using this as a reference point to check that there's a valid date in there. So what I did is I just changed this to 01, so 01/01/1900, which is the start of the calendar in Excel. And because 01 and 01 are interchangeable between days or months, that then just prevented any problems with calendar formats if you're using this template in a different country. So what I did is I created a reference in static data support. So I wanted to do something around making the fields or the column names that I was going to make changeable, where it's got data validation, to make sure the data validation didn't break. So I went data validation. Just going to put that as a header for this section. I'm then going to put a reference to the table, so I know what table I'm doing this for, what table field, so what the original table field is. I then wanted data validation. I then want the range name as well. So I want to know what the range name is. So I'm going to give this a range name as well. I just want to remember what I call it. So let's make that a little bit wider. Let's make that wider. Let's make that wider as well. So let's take the first one. So let's take this one here where we broke it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back to what it was. Category, and you'll notice now that is now fine, and the data validation now works and stops those duplicates, because I just want unique values in there. That's fine, but as soon as I change that, it breaks, remember. So let's just cancel that. Let's get rid of that there. I'm just going to hit delete to remove demo there. So let's look at this table name. So I'm going to go onto table design on the ribbon. This table selected. I'm going to take the table name and do Control Copy, then Escape, go back to my static data support, and I'm just going to put the table reference there so I just know what it is. And let's just make that a little bit wider. As far as the table field, this is going to be category. That's the original name. And as far as the data validation is concerned, is what I'm going to do is go into the table in question. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to open up the data validation again. And remember, I'm just going to select in here, press F2 to go into edit. I can then select that with the quotation marks, the original. I'll do control, copy. I'm then going to cancel that, come out of it, go back into static data, and I'm going to do equals control V. And then what I'm going to do here is, if I just go up to here in the formula bar so you can see it better, is I'm just going to select after that first square bracket, I'm going to do a quotation mark, and I'm going to use the ampersand, delete that original category there, go back to static data, and I'm going to select the header there. So it's now referencing to that table. So I know that's dynamic. If I change that, it will change with it. And I'm then going to do another ampersand and then do a quotation mark. I'm then going to hit return. So now you can see I've got the same formula, or the same formula now that's in that data validation, i.e. the table, port category, and then category there as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a named range. So in here, which is the name box, I'm going to select it. I'm going to do a lowercase r for range and call this category. So that's a name range. By doing that, I'm going to hit return. And I've just given that a name range now, that cell. I'm just going to take that there and copy it. And for my reference, I'm just going to put it in the name range there as well, so I know what it is. And there you go. So let's go back to static data. I'm going to, with the first cell there selected, I'm going to do shift control and then the down arrow and then the down arrow again to make sure I've got all of it selected within the table, the whole range. And I'm going to go back to data validation, and I'm going to go into here and again press F2 to go into edit mode, and then I'm just going to get rid of that reference there in quotation marks and replace it with that name range that I've just copied there. And I'm pointing it to that now. And the other thing is on the error alert, because people are going to be changing this, let's just leave that blank. The title doesn't need to be there. I'm going to click OK. Now, if I change that to categories, look what happens. I do demo, it's fine. If I do demo again, it now works as we want it to, which means now that column can be changed. Brilliant. So if I just cancel that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same principle for the programs here table, so we can change it. Because remember, Melissa wanted that changed to department. I'm also going to do it for projects, so people can change the projects. And then I'm going to change these column names here as well, based on, or I'm going to change this one here. I don't need to do anything with the data validation in this design, but I need to do it for skill set, so I'm going to do that. This is unchangeable, so I don't want people changing that. But if you remember, the other thing that Melissa wanted changed was bank holidays to holidays. So again, I'm going to do the same for the data validation in here as well. And then finally, I'm also going to do it for resourcing and make sure there's unique names there. So make the resource column name also changeable as well. So let me just do that and add the same principle, following that principle, do it for all those in here. And there you go, all done. So let's test this and make sure it works. If I go to static data, and what I've done is I've also highlighted all the columns here as well where we can make changes. So I've done that for category, as I say, the programs, projects. I've highlighted these because obviously if you've changed these, you'll need to change these accordingly. Skill set, and also bank holidays, and also on resources, I've also done the same here. Resource and skill set, just to make sure that we keep track of that. I've also, on the various different here, I would say, again, here, I would just change this to green, just to make sure, again, we know which items can be changed. Now, just do those. Again, skill set there, let's change that, just so the user knows. And then utilization, skill set, let's highlight that, just so we know these are things that can be changed. Boom. And then last but not least, capacity as well. And remember, in the video that I showed you with similar housekeeping as well, is if you change one of these, then you'll probably want to change the slicer. So all you're going to do is right click on that, go slicer settings, and just change the caption so it matches. So for example, if I want this to be department here, let's change that. That means that's changed. I can change here this to be department, like so. And then on static data, let's change over here, let's change this to be department. Oh, put an X in front of it. And then if I change this to be department, and also Melissa requested bank holidays to be changed to holidays, so let's change that to holidays. Yeah, that seems to work. So let's add here, I'm going to do priority order 6, make that demo, that now, and let's make this to be sales. Oh, as a department, that now works. Let's go down to here, let's add a project, a new project, call that project sales. Let's do on the cross reference here, there's sales there, tab across, let's add the new project, and let's make it discretionary like so. Oh, in fact, let's add the demo there. There you go. So we've now done that. So that all seems to work fine. Let's add some demand for our new department and our new project. So let's go over to resource demand. Let's do the drop down. And if I choose sales here, it'll then choose, so there it's only picking up project sales, which is the only project that's aligned, cross-reference to that. Let's make it from the 1st of January 24, the start, and let's do 7 hours on a Monday, 7 there, 7 there, and then let's do 5 there and 5 there on Friday, 0 for Saturday and 0 for Sunday, and then let's end that pattern with that demand on the 31st of the 12th, 24. And I want a project manager. Will then show me the project managers. So let's choose Jane Smith. Boom, done. Right, and there you go. That seems to work. We don't need this available now, so I'm going to right click on that and hide it. And we should be able to reapply the protection. So on the static data tab, I'm going to click protect, and there you go. So it's all protected. So let's do data refresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select data, make sure we can see the queries and connections, because I want you to see what happens. So the data validation has worked, but here are all the queries now. So when I click this refresh here and do data refresh, let's see what happens. I'll click OK, and you can see we've got some problems here. So portfolio exfer hasn't worked. The bank holidays. If I go to, we look at demand here, look at department. Got something here, but it's not picked up it's not picked up the stuff for Jane as far as the project or the department. That hasn't worked yet. So it's not been able to do that properly because we've got some errors here. And fundamentally, what's happened here is because we've changed here on the exfer here, if I go into here and right click on it and do edit, let's bring up Power Query so you can see it, but you can see with the Power Query open, it can't find program. It's looking for program, right? So let me just close that down. So what I'm going to do is we need to do something here. And I think the best way to do it is if I change this back to program here. Oh, and of course I can't change it because of the protection. So I'm going to go over to here and say unprotect. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all these back to what they were. So that's going to be bank holidays. And I would advise you to approach it in the same way before you're making these changes. So I'm going to make that program. I'm going to make that program there also. Now the thing I would say here is don't worry about what we've changed here because these are Power Pivot tables. They don't break when you change the actual field names or within the Power Pivot. If it was a normal pivot table, you wouldn't be able to do that, but you can rename them and it doesn't interfere with the Power Pivot model. It's fine. It can handle those changes. So again, if I then just try refreshing the data, and I do OK, you can see everything's worked fine. If I go to demand, you'll notice down here there's sales and it's picked it up fine because this cross-reference stuff works. So we've handled the data validation, but Power Query breaks. So let's do this. Let's take the let's do this one at a time here. So let's take the table resources. Let's use that as an example here. So if I go to resources and let's change this to from resource. In fact, I've got to, because when you refresh data, it reapplies to protection. So let's unprotect it like so. Then if I go to resources here and let's just take the resources, add an S to resources. So I've changed the column name within the table. And here within Power Query, if I right click on that and do edit, it's going to break. And there you go. We've got the error. It can't find resource. So if I go back to source, you can see there's resources, right? So if I take that there and I double click on it and I change it back to resource and hit return, it'll ask me to insert the step and I do insert, and there it's done it. It's reinserted that step there. And if I just right click on that, I can rename that step, and I'm going to do rename resource, hit return, so I know what that is, and now at the end it's fine. So I've changed it back to resource within Power Query so it works, and it means I don't have to change the whole query. If I close and load that, it's now fine. It's done. Yeah, but you don't want to keep doing that. You want it to be able to handle the change, because if I take that back to resource and then I go back into here and do edit, watch what happens. I've rebroke it again because it's now looking for resources and it can't find it. And obviously this here is broke as well. So if I go back to source, I can use a table column names. And what I mean by that is if I go to here and I look at the resource name, and I can see here I've got resources, so it's trying to change resources, so it's hard coded to resources. But I don't want that. I want it to be not based on a hard coded name. I want it to know it based on the column position. So this is column 0, 1, 2 and 3. And the way that I use that is 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. So if I go into here, just go into the formula bar here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of resources there. In that change, rename the column, and I'm going to type table, then I'm going to hit C for column. And you see this column names, table column names. I'm just going to say I want to, inside an open and closed bracket, and I do SO for source. So remember the source, so that's what I'm referring to, source there. Then after that statement here, table.column names, source in brackets, I'm going to do squiggly line, and I'm going to type 0, because I'm referring to that first column. Yeah, if I do tick and enter that, so that now works, look, because I've referred to, if I go to source here, I referred to in the table that as 0, 1, 2 and 3. I referred to it as 0. If I wanted to refer to the skill set, it would be 1 in that squiggly line there, or generic, it would be 1 and so on. And now you can see the actual query doesn't break. If I do close and load, it's fine. And if I change this to resources, back to resources, so I've changed the column header, yeah, and I try refreshing that query there again and do refresh. The query now handles the column header changing without breaking. So again, if I put that back to resource and I refresh it, and there you go, it's refreshed, no problems. So following that principle, if I go back to my static data, is all I've got to do is systematically just go through these, and all I'm going to do is so categories here, you'll notice is not pulled through in here within Power Query, so I don't need to worry about that. The program there is not, also it's not changed. The first one, let's look at capacity. Let's do edit. So if you just remind yourself what it's looking at, so if I'm looking at capacity here, we'll just go back to source. So this is pulling from the capacity table. So if I've changed, remember I wanted to be able to change the resource, and also we wanted to change, in fact it's just the resource, so I've made that interchangeable as well. So again, I'm just going to close that down without making any changes. So I'm going to go to the resource capacity here. And again, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to say resources. Then I'm going to do edit. It'll break. I'm going to go to here as far as source. Here, I'm just going to, so starting right at source there, I'm going to double click and change that to resource. It's going to ask me to insert the step. I'm going to go OK. So there's that step. I'm going to right click on it, rename it, and do rename resource so I know what it is. I'm going to hit return. Then I'm going to go into here and I'm going to get rid of that resources reference there. And again, I'm going to type table, type C, not a full stop, C. You see column names there. I'm going to select that. I'm going to do an open bracket, and then I'm going to start typing source. I'm going to select source there from the drop down. Then after that closed bracket there, after source, I'm going to do squiggly line, and because resources is the first one there, I'm just going to do 0. So it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then I'm going to do tick there to accept it. And now it all works fine. I'm going to do close and load. So that's the only one that changes from that. Yeah. And again, if I then look at the table capacity adjustment, and let's just edit that. And we look at source. So that's coming from the resource table. So the only thing that we've got in the resource table to change is the resource column. Yeah. So again, all I can do is just do that, make that resources. It'll say insert. All I'm going to do is then rename that, rename that step to be rename resource again. Return. Then I'm just going to change that resources there back to resource. And again, I'm going to write that statement in there. So I'm going to do table. C for column names. There's the column name. Select that. Do an open bracket. I want it to refer to the source. Then I'm going to do a squiggly line. And again, this is the first column, so it's 0. And I'm going to do tick. And we've now made that dynamic there. So if that changes, it's fine and it's not going to break. Again, I'm going to do close and load. So that's capacity. We've done capacity, we've done table capacity adjustment. And let's look at the demand now, and let's look at this one. So if I do edit, again, go to source. So this is pulling from the resource capacity, so the demand table where you can see we've got sales, project sales, and so on. So there's a number of columns in here that we want to change. We want to change the first one because we say that's going to be interchangeable. So is the project, so 0 and 1. Then we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, so column 11 and column 12, those are also going to be changeable. So we want to change all those. So again, from there on the source, yeah, I'm just going to double click on program, change that to programs, yeah, and hit return. It'll ask me to insert the step. I'm going to go, yep. I'm going to rename that as rename program. and hit return. And then again on here, I'm just going to change that first one. So again, it's the first column, so that's 0. So I'm going to get rid of the program, the hard-coded program, and do table. Type C. There's column names. Open bracket. You can do source. Then after that close bracket after source, I'm going to do that curly bracket, open bracket, and do 0. I'm going to get rid of the S on programs there because I don't need it now. So I want it to rename it back to what the original name is so it doesn't break all the connections in Power Query. And I'm going to do tick. And that's now fine. That now works. But this time now I want to change the project. So again, on the rename program, I'm just going to double click with that step selected. I'm going to double click again. I'm going to change that to an S and hit return. It'll ask me to insert the step. I'm going to insert it, so I'm going to rename this step. Do rename, so this is the project, so I'm going to do rename project and hit OCD. I want an uppercase P project and hit return. Now this one is different, so I'm going to get rid of the S there and what I'm renaming it to. Then I'm going to replace this and let's get rid of that project, hard-coded project, and do table. Do C, column names, it's coming up automatic there. To open bracket, I want source. Select that from the drop down. This time though, instead of doing 0, I'm going to do curly bracket. Instead of doing 0, because that's 0 there, this is 1. So 0, 1, 2. Yeah, so this is going to be 1. So I'm going to change that to a 1, like so. And then I'm going to do tick. There you go, it's gone back to project, and that's worked. So again, next one, I've got that. So the next one I want to change is, if I scroll over, it's going to be skill set. So I'm going to double click on that to rename it and do S, hit return. I'm going to insert the step. I'm going to rename the step, so I'm going to right click on it and do rename. I'm going to call this rename skill set, like so, and hit return. Again, with that selected in the formula bar here, I'm going to change this back to get rid of the S that I just added. Now this is column 11 based on what we just counted. So I'm going to do table. There's column names there. Open bracket, choose source, type source, and then it is select it. And after that close bracket, do the squiggly line. And this time I'm going to do 11. Yeah, so there's that skill sets, column 11. And I'm going to hit the tick to accept that input. I should go back to skill set there. Boom, done. And then finally, with the rename skill set, I'm going to double click on resource. And I'm going to put an S on the end of that. And I'm going to hit return. I'm going to insert that step. I'm then going to do rename that and call this rename resource and hit return. So within this table that we're pulling in, this is column 12. So again, with that step selected, I'm just going to remove the S. I'm going to go to get rid of this here, hard-coded resource, start typing table, this table column names, open bracket, do source, this is my source, and click after it, do open squiggly line, so this is 12, column 12, I'm going to do 12, and then I'm going to click the tick to accept it. and it's gone wrong. And the reason why it's gone wrong is I've clumsy fingers, I've deleted the comma there. So if I put the comma back in and then do tick, and there you go, all done. And if I do close and load, that is now dynamic based on the demand. And you'd literally go through each one and just replace, and that's how you'd make the column names dynamic. So if I now carry on and I replace all the column names, let me just do that. And there you go, that's now all done. So on static data, I've changed this to department, I've changed this to holidays, and I've put those dynamic columns now so it's not hard coded with that table.column names. And now when I refresh the data, I'll click OK. Everything has worked fine. If I go to demand, I can see there's my and there's sales. It's picked it up fine. If I go to my the summary, everything's there. Now in the new template, I've added some. I've made this text as well dynamic in version 1.4. But that is how you make the validation dynamic, and that's how I made the tables dynamic to enable the user to make control changes to the table headers where it doesn't break Power Query. I hope you found that helpful and informative and you learnt something there. If so, please remember to click the like, subscribe and smash that notifications button for future content. And as always, I wish you an absolutely wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video from Change, Tips and Tools. Bye bye now.